right, next up is one of my favorite authors, and one of the reasons I feel that that we do these events. We started them in 2004, and I believe she probably read at the very first event, and who I first met, I believe it was 1999, and I was like, hey Michelle, I wrote a poem and I'm reading it at the open mic, will you come listen to me? So please welcome one of my idols, Michelle T.
Oh, it was a poem about temping. It wasn't about love. So finding love at the temp office? No? Alright. Hey guys, I'm going to read part of a book that I actually just finished the first draft this week. I'm very excited. It's new. And I think it's from the beginning, so I don't think you need to know anything except the narrator's name is Michelle. She's 27, and she's she's about to, most of the book she's in a relationship with an 18-year-old named Persephone. Michelle and Persephone should not have come together. Michelle was years older than the poet. Indeed, they had met the night she debuted her poetry at a youth poetry slam. Michelle, as a non-youth, an adult she supposed, was invited to help judge the performances and select a winner. She sat in the risers of a dance studio and watched as teen after teen approached the microphone and delivered their wordy manifestos. Clear patterns emerged. Anger was channeled into rage against injustice. People were mad at racism, at cops and teachers and parents, the prison industrial complex, and the criminalization of poverty. Other poems got cosmic. Kids tranced out, imagining themselves the progeny of planets, of outer space, Mother Earth. They proclaimed their ancestral lineage. Michelle heard shout-outs to Yemaya and Quetzalcoatl, to Thor and Nefertiti. The boys' hands reached out and rubbed the air in front of them as if they were scratching records. The girls tilted their heads toward the ceiling, and their tones took on a faraway wistfulness, like a bunch of little Stevie Nicks. Michelle was bored. Ziggy sat beside her, that's her best friend. The two of them had considered smuggling alcohol into the event just for the transgressive thrill, just to be outrageous, not because they were alcoholics. They had decided against it, sure proof that they were in fact not alcoholics. Their hard drinking was a sort of lifestyle performance, like the artist who wore only red for a year, then only blue, then yellow, as it corresponded to her chakras. They were playing the parts of alcoholically inclined females, embodying a sort of Hunter Thompson persona, an inherently feminist stance for a couple of girls to take, really, so there was that too. They were too self-aware to be alcoholics. Real alcoholics don't even know they could be alcoholics. They just drank and ruined their lives and didn't have any fun and were men. Michelle and Ziggy knew this. This was their father's. Michelle was killing his liver by a beach somewhere in Florida. She hadn't heard from him in years, assumed she would never speak to him again, that he would die, had already died, without Michelle ever learning of it. Ziggy's father was an alcoholic Midwestern high school principal who had responded with a "Humph" when Ziggy asked for help with her heroin habit. "That stuff's not good for you, you should stop." "Dad, I can't stop, I need help." "Humph." Who were these people? They were alcoholics. Michelle and Ziggy were not losers in this style, and so they were not alcoholics. They were living exciting, crazy queer lives full of poetry and camaraderie and heart-seizing crushes. I mean, not that night, but generally. That night they were bored. All the teen poets sounded the same. It was sort of depressing. "They're teenagers, for God's sake," Ziggy scolded Michelle when she complained. "What were you doing when you were their age?" Michelle remembered she was having an affair with the bisexual witch who played Frankenfurter at the Rocky Horror Picture Show. She had given him a blowjob in the trunk of her best friend's Hyundai. He hadn't enjoyed it, didn't like oral sex, thought Michelle was sort of trashy for having gone there. Michelle had only been trying to do something nice for the witch, who she thought she was so cute with his long bleached hair. She relayed the story to Ziggy. "See," Ziggy said, "you were sucking dick. These kids are making art." Teenage Ziggy had been a frustrated poet with an early drug habit, scrawling fuck, 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 fuck in her journal for pages and pages. She still had the books, had shown them to Michelle. They were very cool to look at, having the scrawled deliberation of a Raymond Pettibon mixed with the druggy splatter of a Ralph Steadman. The teen poets before them were so wholesome and focused and directed, so young, with such a grasp on language and the confidence to perform themselves at a crowd of strangers. They were miracles, all of them. They would grow up and go to writing programs, and summer at writers' colonies, and have their fiction published in highbrow magazines. They were starting so early. It was much too late for Michelle and Ziggy. They were 27 already. In no time at all, they'd be 30. Terrifying. No one knew what would happen then. Michelle couldn't imagine anything more than writing zine-ish memoirs and working in bookstores. Many of her co-workers were gray-haired and elderly, so she figured she really could work there for the rest of her life, engaged in the challenge of living on $9 an hour. Michelle thought the only thing that would change as she entered her 30s was maybe she'd want to join a gym, but it was hard to say. Ziggy figured she'd be dead. On the stage, an adorable boy with a wild afro that weighed more than he did spoke a jumble of new-agey nonsense into the mic. "Is he stoned?" Michelle asked Ziggy her opinion. "He's not making any sense." Michelle did not enjoy pot and often didn't recognize the signs of someone being under its influence. This kid sounded like a cat had pawed across his keyboard and he was reading the results as a poem. "It's like jazz," Ziggy explained. "He's like scatting, you know, biddly-bop, diddy-bop." Ziggy proceeded to scat. Someone behind them hissed a shush, probably the boy's parents, Michelle thought. On stage, the poet began to beatbox, confirming Ziggy analysis and energizing the crowd, even Michelle. He sounded like a machine, like a robot. How was he doing it? It was amazing. The audience began to clap along. It was impossible to not be carried away on this wave of excitement. Michelle, who loathed audience participation with a panic that approached pathology, brought her hands together. Ziggy was hollering and throwing her hands in the air, making the ooh-ooh noise that was like a hip-hop birding call. She heard others respond in kind all around the studio. The boy made a sound like a needle being pulled from a record and was done. He smiled sheepishly at the audience and shuffled meekly from the stage, his cloud of hair bouncing above him. Michelle figured they were pretty much done, and then Persephone took the stage. Her hair was the color of faded jeans and choppy. Everything about her was choppy. The sleeves had been sawed from her oversized t-shirt. Her pants had been cropped just below the knee. High tops puffed out around her ankles. Her face as she moved into the light was so stony, it took Michelle a moment to recognize her as female, a recognition that immediately bled into an understanding of the teen as queer. A queer teen! Michelle turned and clutched at Ziggy wordlessly. A queer teen! Michelle and Ziggy loved queer teens. All queers loved queer teens. Queer teens triggered so much in a grown homosexual. All the trauma of their gay youths bubbled up inside them, and the earnest do-gooder gene possessed by every gay went into overdrive. They wanted to save the queer teens, make sure they weren't getting beat up at school or tossed from their homes to sleep in parks. It was a way to redeem their own histories of getting beat up at school and tossed from homes to sleep in parks. Every queer was in the process of creating some sort of familial situation to replace the ones they'd fled, and the presence of young people made this feel more acute, urgent even, triggering dormant maternal-paternal instincts. Nearly all the queers Michelle knew were fuck-ups in one way or another. Being cast out of society early on made you see civilization for the farce it was, a theater of cruelty no one need participate in. Instead, you became a fuck-up. It was a political statement and a survival skill. Everyone around Michelle drank too much, did drugs, worked harder at pulling scams than they would ever work at finding a job. Those who did have jobs under-earned, quit, or got fired regularly. They vandalized and picked fights. They scratched their keys across the sides of fine automobiles, zesting the paint from the doors. One girl was doing an art project in which she documented herself urinating on every SUV she encountered. Everyone had bad credit or no credit, which was the worst credit. What they excelled at was bonding, banding together, falling into passionate and crazy love, a love that had to be bigger than the awful specter of everything else, bigger than failure, bigger than life. They clumped together in friendship with the loyalty of Italian mafioso. "I would fucking die for you," Michelle liked to tell Ziggy when they were wasted. "I would fucking die for you too," Ziggy concurred. "I would take a bullet for you." She took a glug from her bottle. "What about Stitch? Would you die for her?" "I would throw my body in fucking harm's way for Stitch." "I would too," Ziggy nodded without hesitation. Surely no one would ever be asked to take a bullet for one another, but this was not the point. The world beyond them felt hostile and impossible to join, so taking bullets was an emotional truth. It felt real. Knowing that the one thing they excelled at was also the only worthwhile thing in life, love, camaraderie, family, the queers looked upon their teens like orphaned cubs stumbling in from the wild, and everyone wanted to scoot them into their den. That's it. Thanks.